back to Hope Cottage. Hope you're all doing well. It is Friday night, so Shabbat Shalom. It is just about sundown here. I don't know, maybe 20 minutes and the sun will go down. I am so happy about that. Just really needing this restful time. Nothing bad, just busy, right? It's just been busy in my brain, not even really a lot of running around, although I have been running around a lot. Lindsay started a new job and she is saving for a car, so she needs a ride 5 days a week. Thankfully, she's not too far. She's just a couple minutes up the road, and so usually I'm headed up there anyway, right, to drop off my Etsy stuff at the post office, and so I can just take her to work. It's not that big of a deal, but just having to be like available for that, right, and working life around that. That feels busy, and just this time of year feels busy, like with school and that kind of stuff. We don't take a normal like public school schedule, and so, you know, taking the summers off and all that, we don't do that. We actually school through the summer, and then we take the holy days off, like the fall feasts, holy days. We take that time period through the end of the year. So this year, our calendar is kind of funky, and so we won't be celebrating the fall feasts until starting about mid-October. So we'll be taking from probably the beginning of October through the end of January off. And then we try to do school good through the spring and summer so that we can take those, you know, fall feasts and cozy season off and just chill at home. So anyway, while everybody else is ramping up to ramp down, I guess, and be done with school for a while, we're still at it. And this just feels like a busy season, and I don't really know why, but I was thinking about this earlier today when I was texting one of my friends, and how it doesn't matter what I have planned in the spring, it always seems busy, right? For the last couple of years, I've traveled in the spring. I've gone to England, I've gone to Oregon. And so I was just like, wow, well, that's why it's busy, right? Because I'm running all over the place. And then in between, you know, we had a graduation a couple of years ago in the spring. And so I've just thought, well, that's what it is. But this spring, we're not really doing anything really spectacular. I'm not traveling. I'm not leaving the state at all. Like, I don't even know, maybe not even until Sukkot, if we even leave the state for Sukkot. And it still feels like I'm just so busy. So I was thinking, I don't think it's necessarily the stuff that I pack into spring. I think it's just the rhythm of the way we're created, right? Because if you look at nature, like what is nature's busiest season right now, right? The birds are like, were last week before, frantically making their nests. We've got the trees and other plants just frantically bursting into color, right? Just a few weeks ago, all of these trees out here were just bare, right? With little tiny buds on them. And now they've all burst out in this busyness of a million different shades of green and different kinds of leaves and whatever. Just creation is busy during this time, right? Busy growing things and, you know, just being born and that kind of stuff. So maybe that's why it is. Maybe we're just busy this time of year as well. Anyway, all that to say, I'm thankful for Shabbat. If I talk long enough, Shabbat will show up. But I thought I would come out here and just visit with you guys a little bit tonight because I just haven't in a long time, right? Everything that I've put out lately has been really scripted and very careful that I am careful with my words, and I think that's a good thing. But I have been tested lately a few times in my spontaneity, and I feel like I've passed this test pretty well without running my mouth too far. So I am going to try to give some of these unscripted sort of chatty videos a try. And if I can mind my P's and Q's, then I might even try doing lives here pretty soon. I just want to be careful that my words don't dishonor the Father, right? And when you've gone through hurtful things, sometimes that just shows up in the way that you treat people, right? So I don't want to be like that. So anyway, I thought I'd come out tonight, give it a try, talk to you guys sort of off the cuff and unscripted. I have some scripture to share, and I don't know, just whatever comes up. But yeah, we should be able, honestly, to do some lives pretty soon. Jamie just signed us up for Starlink against my, I don't know about better judgment, but alternate judgment. He was like, it's gonna be fine. fine. So he signed us up, and yes, it's much, much faster. We don't have fiber up here at all. So, and by up here, I mean right smack dab in the middle of a city of 40,000 people. So who knows? Maybe we'll get it one of these days, but right now we don't. So we got Starlink. It's going okay. And that's that. That's all I'm gonna say about that. But yeah, we're doing good. We just celebrated our granddaughter's first birthday, Aya. She just turned 1, and all of my kids were able to be there for that, so it was really special. We got a family picture, and that was really nice. A couple of our sons we hadn't seen in a little bit, so that was good. So we got to do that. And I don't know, like, I don't have any really massively big, awesome news for you guys, just kind of life going on as life does. But today I've been thinking about this scripture, and it is in 2 Timothy. I gotta put on my granny glasses because I'm 46 now, folks. And that means you need some glasses to read, apparently. At least it does in my world. So I've been thinking about 2 Timothy. Why am I turned to 3 Titus? Hold on. Interesting. Okay, I had meant to turn to 2 Timothy chapter 3. I had turned to Titus chapter 3. And it's good too. So I think I'm going to go with this, and maybe this is where the Father wanted me to start. I don't know. I'm not putting any words in his mouth. I'm just saying it's very interesting that I ended up turning to this, because when I read it, I was like, oh yeah, that's so good. Without even really recognizing that's not the scriptures that I had been thinking about for the last little bit to share with you guys. So who knows? Anyway, Titus 3, starting in verse 9, says, "But avoid foolish disputes, genealogies, contentions, and strivings about the law, for they are unprofitable and useless. Reject a divisive man after the first and second admonition, knowing that such a person is warped and sinning, being self-condemned." So I think that the reason why maybe I didn't notice right away is because part of what I wanted to talk about was this idea of putting up our boundaries with people who are not good influences on us. And this section does actually address that. So yeah, we'll talk about that first. Reject a divisive man after the first and second admonition, knowing that such a person is warped and sinning, being self-condemned. Self-condemned, right? They're leading themselves into condemnation. They are putting themselves on a wrong road. We want to reject that after a certain point so that we don't end up on that road, right? So rejecting a divisive person after the first or second admonition. That means that we don't immediately just be like, forget you. If it's a brother or a sister, we don't immediately turn away. We don't immediately shut them out, turn them off, shut them off, put up our wall and say, no, you can't be a part of my life. We begin by admonishing, right? Reminding the person, hey, that doesn't really follow in the character of Yeshua. That doesn't really follow along with Yahweh's instructions, right? And we do that a couple of times before actually. So this, my version says rejecting them, but avoid foolish disputes, genealogies. So arguing about, maybe where line you come from, or, modern days now would maybe be like, I'm the pastor's son. My family's been in this church for 35 years, or we started this fellowship, we've been here from the beginning. I don't know, maybe that's where that could apply. Contentions, right? So just basic arguments. Strivings about the law. Yeah. For they are unprofitable and useless. It is useless to try to convince someone of something that they don't want to be convinced by. It's pointless, right? And we don't see Yeshua doing that. We don't see him repeating himself to the same person very often. Usually he just gives it to them and they take it or leave it, and then he moves on. And that's the example that he actually told us, right? Wipe our feet off and keep moving when we are rejected or teased or whatever, and not to strive. It's unprofitable these arguments and these debates. And we can sit back and, say, we'll use Facebook for an example because it's one of the worst cesspits for this kind of stuff. We can sit back and look at that Facebook debate and say, yeah, they should not be striving. Wow, that's so unprofitable. That's so ridiculous. That's so obnoxious. But we do get pulled into them, right? We do. We get pulled into them. Even if we don't comment, it's in our heads. We're, internal dialoguing. Well, I would say this. I should say this. Maybe I'll say this. We post something, we delete. It's just so unprofitable, unproductive. This also says useless. Yeah, there's no point. The instruction from our brother here is to avoid those kinds of things. And if there is someone in your, sphere of people who influence you or, speak around you or act around you who is acting this way, reject them after the first couple of warnings, right? You don't have to stay in fellowship with someone who is going to bring you down that way. Not only is it negative, not only is it irritating, not only does it kill your happy spirit and your joy, it also influences you to act that way, right? And a lot of us know that firsthand. I know that firsthand for sure. I've acted in ways that were just abominable because I didn't pull myself out of situations where I was influenced fast enough. And I began to take on the characteristics and the lines of thinking of people who really needed some reform, right? And refinement. And it gave me permission to also act that way and also treat people that way. I felt like I had permission since the other godly people around me were doing it. We were all acting very ungodly, right? Someone should have rejected us after a couple of admonitions. Now, where I was going to read from is 2 Timothy chapter 3. So let's go there. And it says, Sarah, put on your granny glasses. All right, it says, but know this, that in the last days, let's start over. But know this, that in the last days, perilous times will come. For men will be lovers of themselves, lovers of money, boasters, proud, blasphemers, disobedient to parents, unthankful, unholy, unloving, unforgiving, slanderers, without self-control, brutal, despisers of good, traitors, headstrong, haughty, lovers of pleasure rather than lovers of God, having a form of godliness but denying its power, and from such people turn away. I do want to keep reading in a minute, but I want to stop here because even as I'm reading this, I feel like the Father is refining today's understanding of this anyway, and that is that we all have a tendency to be this person, right? And that is why it is so important that we don't spend that time being influenced by what we read in Titus, right? It is so important that we reject those influences. We're not rejecting a human and their humanity. We're not rejecting someone's right to exist. And by rejecting them, we're not, it doesn't have to be an angry, negative thing. It could be something that's done quietly and they don't even know you've rejected them. It's just, we stop. We stop the influence. We put up a boundary. We stop caring so much about what they think or what they speak into our life. Sometimes we can turn and walk away and not be a part of that relationship. Sometimes we can't. Sometimes they're still there. We in our hearts reject. We in our hearts speak truth to ourselves and remember the good and the holy ways. I think that when this says in the last days, perilous times will come, and then it lists these things that people will struggle with, right? Lovers of themselves, lovers of money, boasters, blasphemers, disobedient to parents, unthankful, unholy, unloving, unforgiving. These are the things that even we who really want to follow Yahweh, that we really want to walk in the character of Yeshua, even we will have a hard time consistently being these people. The negativity is everywhere, right? It is just surrounding us like a gross yellow sulfur cloud of negativity, right? Wherever we go, especially online, which is where most of us are a good majority of the time. Let's just be honest about it. Too much of the time. And that negativity is just swirling, and it's so hard to reject and walk away from it. But it's so much what we need to do so that we don't fall into a consistent lifestyle of being this sort of person. Because this, in verse 6, it says, "For of this sort are those who creep into households and make captives of gullible women, loaded down with sins, led away by various lusts, always learning and never able to come to the knowledge of the truth." Guys, this is all the Facebook groups, right? All those Torah Observant Fellowship Facebook groups that are supposed to be bringing together brothers and sisters and encouraging us. And instead, we are allowing things into our homes. We're allowing attitudes and spirits, not spirits, ooh, although maybe, but the spirit of the attitude, right? The atmosphere, you know what I'm trying to say. Just the characteristic of that into our homes are creeping in. Gullible women. Now, men can be gullible too, right? But if you think about that, like, I don't know, I imagine like a medieval woman, and she's standing there at her hearth with her apron, and, you know, she's, I don't know what, fanning the flames away from her bread so it doesn't overheat before the middle gets done or something. And some kind of black, yucky looking, slimy, demonic creature comes creeping into her home and, you know, wraps himself around her and starts whispering things into her ear. And that's really probably too much imagination there. But, you know, you see that kind of stuff like in art. And that's kind of what I imagined this to be like. We're just minding our own business. We're just doing the things of the day. And we think for a minute, hey, I'm just going to click on, you know, see what's going on Facebook. So, you know, we scroll, we refresh, and immediately something pops up that just messes with our spirit, right? It's usually some kind of dramatic Facebook fight between brothers and sisters, people of Yahweh, or it's some kind of just creepy thing we don't want to see, just something to bring negativity. And now we have allowed that to creep into our home. And we can get stuck in the scroll, stuck in the, you know, if we're not responding to it, we're at least reading everybody's arguments, When I do that, I just try to always remind myself, this is gossip. This is gossip. If somebody was actually standing here saying this stuff to me, it would be horrific. It is gossip. And I don't always remember to do that, and that's unfortunate. But to do that and to allow it to affect our spirit, yeah, we are 100% being gullible. That's exactly what we are. We have given in to the enemy who wanted to wreck our day. The enemy who wanted to steal our peace. Yeah, we were totally gullible. That's exactly what we did. So we want to think that we are smart and, you know, very close to the Father. We are the elect. You know, that we are so spiritually mature, but we will allow ourselves to get pulled into this stuff and allow it to affect our spirit, allow it to affect our attitude, and then what does that do? That gets, you know, puked out onto the rest of their family, or, you know, we join the conversation online or whatever. We become this gullible woman, loaded down with sins, led away by various lusts, always learning, never able to come to the knowledge of the truth. That I also think is something that's a really big problem right now, is there's so much information out there. And everybody is hungry to learn something new, right? Especially if you have come to Torah. It's like, God opened our eyes to so many things, such an understanding of his law and, what is for today, and the joy of keeping his Shabbat, and the beauty of celebrating his feasts, and the fun and quirky weirdnesses of wearing the tassels, and the benefits of eating healthy, and sort of the fun ways of, searching out the clean and unclean ingredients and making sure that we are, just all the things, right? Being diligent. There's such a joy there. We crave more and more knowledge because it was so much fun getting that knowledge, right? And pretty soon we're down these weird and also gullible roads, believing things, repeating things that are just so ridiculous. They're just so out there, right? And it's all because we get distracted. We just get off on a tangent on something, and we've wasted time, and we've wasted our emotional energy, right, on this thing, and we're dumbing ourselves down spiritually. And then, if we keep reading this, we can end up facing this horrible thing, which is, now as Jannes and Jambres resisted Moses, so do these also resist the truth. Men of corrupt minds, disapproved concerning the faith. But they will progress no further, for their folly will be manifest to all, as theirs also was. They will progress no further. So we may desire to grow in him. We may desire to be refined and all the things that we think that we want and that we know he wants to do in us. But we may actually get to a point where he's not going to let us go any further because we wasted it and we allowed ourselves to be tempted away from just sticking to the true pursuit of his ways, of his understanding, without all the other influence involved, right? It makes me think about, it's Revelation, it's the church of Ephesus. Let's see if I can find the exact scripture, but you guys know what I'm talking about. I used to teach on this all the time. I probably will do another teaching on that. The church of Ephesus, and it was the one that I have equated to the Torah observant fellowship, the loveless church. They had good understanding. They were really great at like spotting, things that weren't lining up biblically. They were great at spotting false prophets and false prophecy and just fake stuff and whatever. They had a good understanding of the law. They had a good understanding of the character of God, of their Messiah, who their Messiah was, right? All these things. They had a great understanding. What they were missing was love. He said, you've forgotten your first love. This is Revelation, in chapter 2. It's the first church he talks about, chapter 2. And what he says is if you don't get it together, guys, and start treating people with love, you're going to lose your light. I'm going to take away your lampstand. I'm going to take away your ability to minister, to be a light, to be that, evangelist that I've called you to be. And we all are called to be an evangelist to some degree, right? That's Matthew 28, right at the end there, where Yeshua tells us all to go and make disciples and teach them how to walk like him. And some of us, we do that with our kids. We do that with our friends. We do that with the people on our street, or just people that we work with, or just our own family, or whatever, right? Sometimes our circle is small and sometimes our circle is really big and we're just, like international evangelists, or we have a YouTube channel or something. It's not really about how many people you're reaching. It's about, are you reaching the people that he's put in front of you? But if we do that without love for him, love for his law, love for the Father, and love for one another, he's going to take away that ability. He's going to take away that lampstand, and we will no longer be a light. And we will stop growing, just like is warned here in 2 Timothy. We will stop growing. We will stop learning. We will stop understanding. We will just stop where we're at. And what I have found, unfortunately, is people who were once following him, and they end up stopping, whether he stops them or they stop themselves. If they stop, they don't usually stay where they were when they stopped, right? At that level of spiritual maturity and understanding that they were at. It's not like you just pause. You actually start to go backward. You actually start to lose what you had. It's kind of like where Yeshua talks about to whoever has a lot, more will be given, and whoever doesn't have much, what they have will be taken. It's kind of like that, because he takes away what we even had for understanding. It's a corruption of the mind, right? And we're losing what he had given us. And I've watched that happen to people who used to just love Yeshua, loved the Father, loved worship, loved the Word, loved encouraging people with Scripture. And when they chose to step away, they chose to stop following him and chose to stop living out his instructions, it's like they have become a completely different person over time. Their mind is corrupted. You see, it's like watching someone die, and very slowly you feel like they're kind of not all the way alive anymore. I don't know how to explain it. It's kind of like they're more and more becoming a hollow shell. It's horrible. I never want that to happen to anyone I love, but I definitely don't want that ever to happen to me, right? With all the beautiful things that he has shown me in the last 6 years, even of, once he opened my eyes to the understanding of his Torah, that was about 6 years ago, actually. Probably next weekend, or maybe even what are we on? Yeah, I think it was like 6 weeks ago this very week. I think it was, because I think it was May 24th, and this is the 22nd, maybe? Yeah, so that's cool. I'm celebrating an anniversary this week and didn't even realize it. All the things he's shown me, all the good that's been done, all the people that I've been able to influence and that have influenced me, the relationships I've made, the encouragement, the growth, the heartbreak, all of the stuff. How horrible to have that all lost and all taken away. I would just where would I even be? Just floating, right? It's so important that we're careful about our influences. And that's can be hard to say or hard to even think about, because sometimes the people who we really do need to pull away from are people that we care about so much, people that we have such good memories with, just integral parts of our life. But if they're influencing us to go down a wrong road and they will not listen to reason, they won't listen to admonishment, we do have to put up a wall to some degree. Let's see if I can remember this meme to close out. I was on Facebook the other day. You know what? I'm going to go get my laptop real quick and read this to you guys. Just a sec. All right, so here we go. So in talking about the idea of having people in your life that are leading you to be, have these character traits that you don't want, right? And they're acting this way in your own life, and you've given a couple of admonishments, they're not listening, and so you do have to reject at some level or another, so that you don't take those on as well. And they don't influence you, right, or other weaker people in your life. I saw this little meme the other day, and it says, "The day you say enough and mean it and live like you mean it is the day a long, quiet door opens in the middle of your life." So, you say enough. I'm done. Something needs to change here. This is not profitable to me, you, or anybody else, right? Things need to change. And then when I share this, I wrote, "Sometimes saying enough opens up the door to love the person more freely. When we set boundaries for ourselves in hard relationships, the fear and anxiety of that relationship tends to lessen a bit." And that is so true, because if you have someone in your life that is not good for you, right? It could be a friend, it could be a family member, whether it's their influence or just the way that you feel and act when you are around them, just because of your own personal issues, right? When you're going to be around that person, you start to feel a high level of anxiety, right? You start to feel a high level of fear. You start to feel sort of torn between how the Father wants you to act, and how that person wants you to act, what's comfortable for you in your faith walk, as opposed to what's comfortable for that person and their lack of a faith walk, right? Or they're maybe disjointed or maybe not necessarily biblical faith walk, right? You feel anxiety and stress about having to spend time with them. And what's the conversation going to be like, and how far is it going to go, and what's it going to be like when you have to cut them off, and are they going to make fun of you, and all that kind of stuff. But when you put up the boundary, when you finally say enough, and you put up some limits, right, and you say, no, we're not going to pass this spot, or I'm not going to do this thing we always used to do, or we're not going to be able to meet for as long, or meet in person at all, or whatever it is that whatever, limit and boundary you need to put up, that really frees you, because whether they like it or not, you've laid down the law, right? And now you don't have to be afraid of that anymore. You don't have to be afraid of what it's going to be like when you're in their presence, because maybe you're not in their presence, but even if you are, you told them how far you're willing to go before, party's over. It does make you feel like you have some control over the situation. And if you do have a toxic person in your life, you definitely need to take control over the situation. So I thought that was really good. It doesn't always mean completely cutting them off, right? It may just mean cutting them off from having influence over you. It may just mean cutting them off from being able to speak into your life in a spiritual way or emotionally. And sometimes it may mean totally cutting them off. But when we set prayerful boundaries with people that the Father does want us to set prayerful boundaries with, I think that we do feel a sense of freedom and a big weight lifted off, for sure. All right, well, the sun is down and Shabbat has begun. Yahoo! So I think I will go inside, edit this, stick it up, and go on about my evening in relaxation. And maybe I'll come on a little more often and just kind of chat randomly. I enjoy it. You guys can watch it for a little bit, shut it off if you want, whatever. But I would like to check in more often and just connect again. I do miss these connections online, and I can remember way back when I was making, several videos a week, and I would have people just talk about how thankful that they were that there was the online resources, right? There were people like me and many others who just come on and encourage, or maybe do a Bible study or a teaching or something, and just how great that was, because they were alone and didn't have any local fellowship. And I can just remember kind of speaking to that directly many times, that even if you don't have a local fellowship, there's so much online. And now that I don't have a local fellowship, I don't know if there's actually that much online that I feel is worthwhile. And I'm not really thinking of any person or ministry in particular. It's just that what's hard is it's so hard to find a place that is not negative, right? That is not demeaning and spending so much time putting down others. And so I feel for you guys at a deeper level now, because I'm struggling with that as well. I want my channel to be an encouraging place. I don't want to sugarcoat anything. I want it to be an honest place also. But I want it to be encouraging, because, boy, there's just days when I'm going through something and I'm like, I just wish I had a sister right here that I could just say, hey, come sit on my back porch and let's just chat. I just want to run this by you. I just want to, get some good scriptural counsel. I miss that. And I understand it's the season we're in, but I hope that we're not in it for much longer, because I really miss fellowship. All right. Yeah, there you go. There's a little bit of vulnerability from me. Hope everybody's doing well. I will see you soon. Bye-bye.